y'all, I'm Ellen. We've been super inspired by our journeys of self-healing and discovery.
And I'm Sam, and we want to share our experiences with you to help you get curious about yourself, reconnect, and get intentional about your life so you know what makes you happy.
Welcome to Woo New, the podcast. So Sam and I are really excited to talk to you, Lena. We're sitting here with Lena Lemos, who is the author of a book called Dear Luna Wild, that both of us just completely fell in love with. And it's a series of letters to her not yet born baby daughter, and then, also letters subsequently after she was birthed. And there was something about this book, like I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. And it was like sitting on my coffee table because I knew I needed to read it for this interview, and I had been sitting there for a few weeks, and I just casually picked it up one night and looked at it, and I opened the book, read the first, I think the first story or first letter was really about you and your partner and the breakup that started the whole kind of journey. Yeah. And I didn't put the book down until I was finished.
Oh my God.
It was amazing. It was so amazing.
I mean, I powered through it in less than an hour. I was like, couldn't get enough of it. And like literally the pages are wet from my tears.
Oh my gosh. That's the greatest compliment. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for being here. And
my gosh.
I'm so excited about this conversation.
Me too. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, as you know, for my book, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I think it's a really powerful thing when we can just be completely open and vulnerable. And so I thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, this is going to be awesome. I think we can just even begin with what inspired you to write these letters before. Do you actually call her Luna Wild, or
just Luna?
Just
well,
Luna?
we call her I call her Mama Girl, or Luna Moon Girl. I don't know. She has a lot of nicknames, but only when she's in trouble is she Luna Wild at the moment.
Such a perfect name for that too.
Yeah, but I think I've always written letters. I had actually discovered letters that my parents wrote to me before I was born, when I was a senior in high school and I was working on this memoir. So letters has always been kind of how I express myself. I always ask my husband, he always asks me what I want for a present. I'm like, write me a letter. That's what I want. So when we had just made the decision that we wanted to start to, try to have a family, and then my grandma passed away. And it was really her death, even though we weren't that close. It was the delivering of the eulogy that kind of reignited this spark in me that I was like, wait a second, I have no idea who I am anymore. I had been living my life on autopilot. And like you said, the relationship that kind of ended and sparked this whole new chapter, from the ending of that relationship where I moved to New Jersey and not knowing anyone, knowing absolutely no one for a relationship, and also for a graduate school program. And 2 weeks into living here, I was broken up with in a state where I knew no one. And so I quickly went very much into survival mode. And then 6 months later, I ended up meeting my husband. So from that point, so that was 2012 until, and this was 2018 when I wrote the first letter. So much of my life was not only on autopilot, but it was very much my husband's life, because we started dating, things moved really fast, and I just kind of inserted myself into his life. I stayed here in New Jersey, and so then, call it a come to Jesus moment, was giving my grandma's eulogy, which kind of felt very much like a stand-up comedy routine, and that sounds like terrible to say because it was a funeral.
Those are the best eulogies, though.
Yeah, and it was because she was a very feisty old Italian woman, and so it was delivering that and feeling confident in speaking my truth, and really just the delivery that made me go, wait a second, who am I? And so the night of her funeral, I went home and I wrote this letter to this baby that I had no idea when she was coming, who she was, but I knew that I needed to find myself again, and it felt like that was the motivation that I really needed to start that path.
So you weren't pregnant at that time. You were just basically like, all right, baby spirit.
Yep.
Whoever you are, let me just pour my story out.
Yep.
Wow.
Doesn't it feel like, looking back on that moment, like I know in the book, in some of the letters you talk about how you sort of start your spiritual awakening through the process of being pregnant, but doesn't it seem like that was just so divine? Like,
Yes.
that process had already started so early.
Yes. Yes. And it was really, and I had been kind of dabbling in spirituality before that. I mean, I was very spiritual in my teen years, but the year or so leading up to that, I had started meditating more and started a yoga practice and really had started looking inward, but I still didn't really understand what true spirituality was. But yes, it was that moment that was so much of a catalyst to like the deep, deep stuff.
Yeah. Well, I find it so profound that it's like on reflecting on your life and making sense of the events and the experiences that you've had. I mean, these are the things that we want to pass on to the next generation, right?
Yeah.
These are the lessons, like the gems, the nuggets of wisdom.
Like, oh my God, the letter about the orange juice. I was like, it's true.
Yep.
This is so simple. It was really profound.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we overlook so much of those, those little nuggets of wisdom that we carry within us that we begin to understand as we make ourselves, we go through the world and we heal and we expand and we grow and we carry so much of this with us. And we forget, we think we should have these like big, profound life lessons to share with our kids or the world. But really, I think it's those tiny, really small gems, like you call them, that are much more powerful and impactful.
Do you journal? Like, have you ever journaled? Like,
Oh, all the time. Writing is like my healing modality, and I've come to realize that I narrate my life like Carrie Bradshaw does very much, and so I'm like, I just need to write this down, or else I'm just gonna keep like going on in paragraphs in my head.
I love it. I mean, the thing that also struck me about your book, and just these letters, it is the mixture of these big, profound things that come through, these big moments, and also the really, really small moments. And yeah, it is in the sort of almost like if you don't look close enough, you would miss the lesson or you'd miss whatever's coming through.
Yes.
And isn't that what spirituality is all about? Like the practice, it really is about just growing conscious so that you are literally present in every single moment. You know?
And I think approaching those really small moments I've been telling my husband recently that I want to approach my life with like lust with everything I do, and seeing those tiny moments in that very like passionate celebratory way, I think makes our life so much more full and full of just, gratitude, and it allows us to be present, because if we can see those tiny moments as just something so profound, even though they seem simple, that to me has changed my complete outlook on life.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I was reading it, so I should back up and say my little sister just had her first baby 3 weeks ago. And like, as I'm like crying through the first half of this book and the letters about your doctor's appointments and the shaming around motherhood and the expectation that in 6 weeks you're going to be back to normal, and like, what is normal even? And I literally just had a conversation with my little sister yesterday where she was telling me about how she can't nurse anymore because she said the nurses called her son a piranha because he bites so hard when he nurses. And she was like, she's like, I'm giving him breast milk, but I can't nurse him. And she was like, I can't believe like the amount of pressure and shame around it. Like, and she was like, the nurse just asked me if I was okay with not breastfeeding him in a way that made me feel so shitty about it. She's like, I just broke down and started crying in the doctor's office. And I was like, reading your stories too, just so like heartbroken about the whole thing, because even your story about giving birth and how it wasn't this like profound moment, and like all these things came together in a way that didn't make it feel as, like incredible as maybe like we envisioned that moment would be. It was just so like true and honest. And I'm like so relieved to read these stories. I can't wait to give my sister this book because she's gonna feel so much less alone.
Yeah. I feel like we don't have enough people saying me too. And that goes for every aspect of our life, especially as women, because, we're not only are we indoctrinated by our society to have this idea of what motherhood should look like, right? And we see it in the media and we see it on TV and we see it on Instagram of this, it's almost like the martyr and this perfect life. And, your whole life revolves around your baby. But that means if we are to exist as mothers in that existence, that means that we don't exist as individuals, because everything is so baby focused, and the way that our medical systems are set up to be, by white men who don't understand the thing that frustrated me the most is there's no conversation about the really soul level changes that happen in pregnancy and motherhood, and that our systems completely just treat us like, and I said this in the book, like cattle. And then we go through these experiences, seeing all these things in the media and seeing what we think motherhood should be, and then we're in it and we're like, wait, I don't feel any of these things. My life doesn't look anything like this. I'm alone, and there must be something wrong with me. And then we have these systems to help support, but they're not really supportive, because we're not trained to speak up and say that this is my actual experience. So I've found in what I've been doing through my podcast and my book is making sure that we're creating those spaces where it's actually, honest and vulnerable, so that we can, because if we don't know how to support, then we can't support.
Yeah. And like, you're creating these safe spaces also, and I think you bravely put yourself and your experience out there.
Yep.
To be judged, right? Like,
yep.
I remember, man, I had this conversation, this is years ago, but I had a conversation with a woman who was talking about how, I think as mothers, like one of the stories that you hear all the time is like, this profound moment when the baby arrives and you're just filled with love, and suddenly you're just like, your life is different. And like, it's like, I don't know, it's like the heavens shine on you. And she was explaining to me that like, it actually took like 2 months for her to really feel love for her child.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shame around that, a lot of guilt around that. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Because I don't feel this yet, you know?
Yeah, well, it's kind of weird if you think about it. There's like this human growing inside of you that then comes out of you, and then you're, expected to take care of it. And if you've never taken care of a tiny human before, and you're supposed to love it unconditionally, but I mean, think of us in our marriages and how long we've been with our partner and how long it's taken to cultivate that love, which may or may not be unconditional. And then there's this human that we've never met before, and we're expected to just like spend the rest of our lives with them. We're like, okay.
It's so true. It's meeting a little stranger, you know? Like, yeah, 1,000%.
I mean, I even thought the part like where you talked about getting postpartum depression 6 months later and was so powerful, because man, there are so many stories that we are fed about postpartum depression and what it means and how you get it. And like, it's so, the way that it's diagnosed seems so black and white. But the thing about postpartum depression is like every case is completely unique, and every situation, every mother is feeling so much guilt and shame around it. But it's like, to your point, you spend 9 months with this other human inside your body, feeling disconnected from your body, and then your body goes through the biggest trauma it's ever going to go through. And then this human comes out and you're like, okay, and now there are 50 other things wrong with my body. Like, how can I get back to balance?
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's not a big enough conversation, and I've seen it shift in the time that I've been doing this. My daughter just turned 2, with really focusing on that postpartum support. But again, as mothers, that's not what we're shown. We're shown like, have the most perfect nursery and color palette. Like, no one, that's not going to help anyone. I mean, we need to stop focusing on so much of like the Instagram aesthetics of our lives and focus on the actual real vulnerable things that are happening, because until we're actually normalizing these types of conversations, nothing is going to change. When I started talking about this, I triggered so many people, because I would post on Instagram, like, why is no one asking me about these really deep level changes? Like, if one more person asks me if my baby is sleeping through all the way through the night, like, I'm going to lose my shit on someone. And people were so triggered by that. And I remember someone saying to my mother-in-law, like, I don't even feel like I can ask her about her baby. And I'm like, really? Like, is that where we're at, like these women who have gone through this experience before, and not to say that everyone suffers in motherhood, but so many of us are having these similar experiences, and you see another woman struggling, you see another woman who's going through it, and all you can say is your baby eating okay? Like, no, how are you? Are you doing okay? Like a real, how are you? And I think that was the first triggering thing to me, that people, it was just so surface level, and no one was willing to have those really raw and vulnerable conversations about, you know, womanhood and motherhood. And that just like fueled me to write more, because I was like, come on, people, we can do this.
Yeah. Even when you were pregnant, you were talking about how the only person who asked you how you were doing and didn't ask about what you were craving was your mother.
Yep.
And that was
That made me
only
cry.
twice. That's when the waterworks started. I was like, oh my God.
That made me totally cry. Yeah. You're so right though. It's, you know, and I'm like now looking back on like, you know, my friends, all of my girlfriends have children now, and like everyone except for two of us, or three of us. But yeah, everybody else has at least one or two. And yeah, it's so interesting how it's like, I don't know where this conditioning comes from, where it's very dehumanizing to the mother, right? It is all about the baby, and like, okay, what happens now? Like, how is the baby doing? How is the baby growing? How's the baby, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, it's like the mother's almost like a castaway. Like,
Yes.
you did your job, and now, you know.
Now you're in the background.
I think I described it as like a tarnished pile of organs and bones. That's very much how I felt. I was just like, okay, I guess I'm just like this goop in the corner now. See you all later. Like, it was nice. It was nice knowing all of you. I guess I'm just not here anymore. Cool.
I also think though that the perspective that you put on it from those experiences was so important to be shared, and I'm so grateful that you wrote this book, and that, oh my God, like, Luna's so lucky, you know, that she gets to read these and like understand what that experience is really like, and see how powerful and strong you are, and like what an incredible example you are as like this woman going through this spiritual awakening, because you painted a picture that was so vivid for me around how moms feel like they lose themselves throughout that process, even you know, if it weren't for all the pressure on the outside, you still feel that way, because all of a sudden your whole life is consumed by taking care of this little tiny human.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's truly, and I was always so frustrated with people when I was before I became a parent, how they, you know, they would pull the parenthood card, and I'm like, come on, really, again? And now on the other side of it, I'm like, you don't understand until you're going through it. But to try to at least paint the picture to help people who are, you know, going to go through it or thinking of going through it, I think is such an important conversation that's never had. And you know, no one, I know nothing about my body or postpartum. Even like after giving birth, I still had no idea what was going on. And it wasn't until the last 2 years that I've learned after becoming a mother that I've started to understood that stuff. But how crazy is that we're literally going through this really intense physical thing, and we have no idea what's happening with it, like physically or, you know, spiritually.
Yeah. I mean, I find that, I mean, Sam and I literally, I feel like we just had this conversation not too long ago. I mean, there's so much about just a woman's body that women do not know, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I read Woman Code, I think maybe 2 years ago now. And that was the first time that, you know, I started being introduced to ideas of like, you know, living according to your cycle. And like, if you are experiencing these particular cravings or whatnot, you know, perhaps this is what's happening within your body. They don't teach that shit to you in school. No. You know, why don't they teach that? You know, it's like, it's all the sort of surfacey biological, like, how things work, like the pipeline almost, but it's not really about the nuances.
Yeah. I think what I've come to realize that is, if you look through history and all, you know, this happens over and over and over again, it's all about power, right? Yeah. Like women are literally creators. Like we literally are the, you know, the most potent manifestors that exist, because we can literally bring life from the other side through our own wombs to this earth. And to have a woman that powerful, like fully in her power, understanding that like you can't control that, like let's burn them. Okay, I mean I say that in the book, like let's burn these witches. So like women fully in their power is a very scary thing to those who have such power.
Yeah. Man,
So
it's
true.
so funny looking back on that. Thanks for bringing woman code up, Elle, because it's I as I was reading your book, Lena, I was thinking about woman code too, because it's like Ellen was my Sherpa to like reconnect with my body too. And she was like, you have to read this book. She talks about feeling betrayed by her body and she was like, she uses the exact same words I've heard you use.
Yes.
And it was the first time that I was like, holy shit, like this is what disconnection means. And then there were moments in your book where you used the same language around it too. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
my heart is connected to you guys in such a deep way, because it's like when that happens, because you're disconnected, there's just no way to know. And then once you're disconnected and you are aware of it, it's like, well, fuck, how do I get back?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that's the hardest part that I think is so overwhelming, and that we also forget that, I mean, if we want to transition into talking about spirituality, is because I think so much of that self-awareness is the first step, but then very much like everything else in this world, spirituality is very much an industry. Where now you're stepping in and you want to reconnect, but wait a second, there's still this industry that's so much deeply rooted in capitalism that literally thrives on you feeling unworthy.
Yeah.
So okay, like let's reconnect with yourself, but you're gonna do it this way.
Yeah.
And so to where to start is just completely overwhelming when we're so raw and vulnerable, and we feel that call to reconnect and we want to go inward, but man, it took me years to figure that out. And so if anyone's listening that's feeling overwhelmed, I just want to say that you have all the answers, and trust yourself a lot more, because I think all it really takes is just listening to yourself, because we don't listen to our own hearts enough of what it's actually saying. We hear it and we're like, that's not right.
Or and then this doesn't fit with my schedule today.
Yes, exactly.
Right,
and then we go Google something, we find someone on Instagram, we watch all these videos, when really, we could have just listened in the first place and kind of just followed that rabbit hole and just trusted that our own intuition and what our body is telling us is right.
Yeah.
I think it's like we've been so conditioned to place our power in these external forces, the teachers, the doctors, the whatever, right?
The credentials.
So,
yeah.
Yes. This is me raising the roof.
1,000%. And then when you bring that into spirituality, the same shit's happening with the gurus and like the teachers with a bazillion followers and blah, 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 blah. Can I read something? Like I was just telling Lena before we began, like I took screenshots, and as I was reading the book, I was like literally yelling like hell yes in my head, so loud, and that I ended up like creating a bunch of stories, just like screenshots of these pages. But I really want to read out a few of the little nuggets that you had written specifically about spirituality.
Yes, please do. I'm
okay.
so fired up about this.
I mean, it's like literally, Sam, this is like divine timing, as we had just finished this conversation with Irene and Harpinder from Women of Color Summit. Okay, so you wrote, there should not be privilege in spirituality. Otherwise, it is just another form of oppression and another form of divisiveness. If we continue to depict spirituality as skinny white woman self-care, then we are missing the point. Spirituality isn't about meditating on beaches, crystal collections, access to the best healers or psychics, or prancing in a wildflower field like an ethereal goddess. Which I have a huge problem with.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes to all those things. Yes, all those things can prove valuable, to a spiritual journey. In parentheses, I myself like to prance in fields, as do I. but there needs to be an end to this sparkly FOMO culture that, quote, spiritual influencers have created to prey on soul searchers. Yeah. And I want to read one more thing out. And this was like a list that you had put together. Spirituality isn't just about the sparkly or Instagram worthy images. True transformation is messy, ugly, and uncomfortable as fuck. Oftentimes it happens in the midst of the chaos and when you least expect it. And then you also wrote, this is the last thing I'm going to read. No one can do the hard work for you. That is up to you and you alone. Yes, find the mentors who can be your accountability partner and your guide. Spiritual teachers who operate with integrity will lead you to discover the answers yourself and remind you there is no fast pass to soul growth. I mean, there's so much truth packed into just that, those short little passages. And you are literally speaking my heart. I think when I read this, it was just like, when you hear something so true that it just like permeates and you're just like vibrating.
Yes. Yeah, it took me a really long time to figure that out, because I will be honest that I was the person to go to the crystal shop and be like, this crystal is for your third eye, and it's going to open my third eye, and all my spiritual gifts are going to flood in, and I'm going to have everything that I ever wanted. And it took me a really long time to realize that that's just bullshit. And that, I think spirituality is, like I said, there's this Instagram sparkly version of it that we see, and it leads us down this very commoditized path of, all the things we need and all the credentials we have to have. And, we have to learn from this teacher, when really the self-healing work is the 95% of it, because we're making that space to grow and to evolve. But no one tells you that until you've spent thousands of dollars on all these master classes, and you're like, well, I don't feel any different, and I'm not manifesting everything that I wanted, and my third eye definitely isn't open. We're like, wait a second, like. And so I think we get into this really dangerous environment when spirituality is combined, with the culture that is online business marketing and, master classes and click funnels, because we used to have this wisdom within us. It was passed down from our elders. It was something that we innately knew. And now to, shell over $5,000 for someone to tell us something about ourselves, like, okay, it's basically being like, okay, here's $5,000 to tell me that I have 10 toes on my feet. Like, we should know that these innate things that are so very much part of our spiritual makeup should be accessible to everyone. Because if self-healing is the main modality of spirituality, and we're healing from our human experiences and our traumas, yet we're making it so inaccessible to people who might not have like financial ability, or don't have true access to the internet to be able to take all these classes, like we're leaving so much of our brothers and sisters in the human collective out of the story. If we are combining spirituality with this industry that is so very much about invest in yourself, like really, I don't know that. And I don't mean to, because we do need teachers. And I think it's beautiful that now we live in a world where you can quit your 9-to-5 job and become a spiritual coach and make six figures, but we're not serving the human collective and our soul growth if we're putting these huge paywalls in the way. And so there's just so much. And as a white woman, it feels weird for this to come out of my mouth, because I know that I'm part of the problem, but also trying to change it, that there's so much whiteness and like white woman's culture and spirituality. And I remember 2 years ago, I was, just starting Enlightenedhood, my podcast, and all the stock images when you search spirituality are all white women in yoga clothes.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is just bullshit. And so I have just been trying to be like, how can we represent this better? How can we put a different lens on what spirituality is? Because even my sister, she's very much, went to Johns Hopkins, very like science, Western medicine, like very in that world. And she read my book and she's like, oh, if I would have known that this is what spirituality can be, I would have looked at it a lot different. But we have so many people that are like instantly turned off by the way that it's presented to, quote unquote, make money. And I think that needs to change, because again, we're leaving so many people behind when we should all deserve, we're all completely capable of healing ourselves and accessing our own divinity, but we're not taught that.
Yeah, it reminds me, actually, Ellen and I were just talking about this yesterday, like, to your point, it's a long process. Like we were talking about when I sort of had my dark night of the soul, and was going through that process of just trying to reconnect with my body again as well. I was like, I actually said this yesterday. I was like, fuck, I had to hit rock bottom so hard. And then it took me over a year
Yeah.
to even just get back to a place where I could feel my body again,
Yeah.
you know? And like, but that's where so much of the healing happened. And it's
Yeah.
like, once you really get into it and you start realizing like, okay, this shadow work is no fucking joke.
Yes.
Like this is heavy stuff, but you go through it and you heal it. And then it's like, you start taking these courses where it's like, oh, this is quote unquote what this should be like, or quote unquote, you can learn it this way. But ultimately at the end of the day, everything is about your own experience and your own connection to the divine. And everything is so unique that it's like almost blows my mind that anyone can come up with any sort of system to put into a course that literally like breaks it down in a consistent way.
I'm so happy you said that, because I think that's the thing that we forget too, is because when we're so lost and we're looking for, like you said, Ellen, those external answers and that external validation, and then, you know, here's Ashley, the wellness influencer, who very much this system probably worked for her in her healing. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you and, you know, your unique experiences and your unique physiology and your truth. But, you know, we're so conditioned to instantly be like, oh my gosh, she has 100,000 followers. She must be legit. And you're like, wait a second. And we just give so much of that power and validation away instantly without ever questioning that, oh, wait, maybe I'm equally as capable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like, again, this conditioning, this programming starts so young, right? Like, and you're just told your whole life to trust your teachers, trust all these external sources. So, and really not trust yourself. Never have I don't remember ever being told, like, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, or being asked, right? How does your body feel? Like, do you hurt? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's something that for me as an adult, that was really the first time I was even asking myself, like, where does it hurt?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't even know where my body, you know, like that's how disconnected I was. And I wonder also, I had this like thought that just like completely vanished. But as you were like talking about the influencers and stuff, yeah, I think the fact that, yeah, we have so many of these, you know, thousands and thousands of followers kinds of people that are kind of almost becoming in a weird way this godlike status that, you know, I think we're also very conditioned to want the quick fix, right?
Yes.
We don't want to face the pain. You know, we are such a pain phobic kind of society that like these teachers, if I pay the $1,000 for this, whatever, you know, workshop class, whatever, it's going to fix my pain. Or it's going to take that pain away. And so that becomes like the Advil or the, you know, whatever, the solution of, it's almost kind of like I'm going to expend this money and the money is what represents like my work in a sense, right?
Rather than
like,
the work being learning how to sit with the discomfort.
Yes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and so my hope in my work and my writing is to have that conversation on day one when someone's, you know, being called to the spiritual path. And part of me, I feel like there has to be some kind of ego involved in the beginning, because you kind of have to be drawn to that sparkly to even, you know, feel that call. But I still think there should be the conversation like, look, this is going to be really messy and really uncomfortable, and it's probably not going to be fun at all, but it's like definitely worth it, you know? But I don't know if you can have that conversation with someone on day one. So I always like go back and forth. Like, I want to be real and help people understand that like this is a lifelong process, and it's going to completely turn everything upside down to the point where you probably will look in the mirror in a year. And I think a year is probably a good amount of time that most of us can agree that like huge transformation can happen in a year, that you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself anymore. And when that day comes, it is the most, you know, euphoric, proud moment. But there's a lot of dark moments that take to get there.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the House of Enlightenedhood?
Yeah.
Because I just want to read out also just this definition that you have for, you know, so this is your company and this is your, you know, and you guys really believe in sort of like reclaiming spirituality, which I love, and reclaiming the spiritual awakening experience. And so you talk a lot about open source spirituality, which I find such like, this is the shit that the world actually needs. You know, it's
Yes.
not the freaking $5,000 workshops or whatever, but you define it as freely shared and accessible collective wisdom intended to create a global shift in consciousness that leads to individual and collective peace and liberation. And first of all, thank you for creating this for all of us. But yeah, let's dig in and talk a little bit about what you're trying to do.
Yeah, so this was very much inspired by kind of those points that you read where at the beginning of my, writing this book and going into motherhood, I left my job. I had worked in marketing and communications for 10 years. And I was just feeling this call. And of course, from what I saw, I was like, I want to be like Gabby Bernstein. That was my goal. And I was like, I'm never going to be like Gabby Bernstein. But that was like where my soul was calling me. Like, I want to share my experiences with the world and something that's so in line with the way that I want to live my life. But I had no idea what that was going to look like. And it took me almost 2 years to figure it out. And I was so much bred into the culture of like, okay, you want to be a spiritual entrepreneur? Well, you need a free offer and you need a masterclass and you need a website and you need this passive income. And all of that felt so yucky to me based on, all the things that we just talked about. And what I felt so called was just having these really organic conversations where the idea of credentials and like being a guru went out the window. Just having like face-to-face conversations, open, raw, vulnerable conversations. We're actually talking about the human experience. And it just, like I said before, my spiritual journey started out before where I was just, so enamored by the glittery version that once I got into the deep healing and really went through it and came out on the other side, that I realized that, so much of this is about our human experience. And if we're not honoring every single human, then this isn't spirituality. Mm-hmm. And so I kept just hearing this call, but I couldn't figure out, how to put it into the world, into a tangible form. And what had really gotten the most engagement for the work I was doing, and my website was literally just interviews, and I had my podcast to start out small, was just these human stories. And I have always been drawn to storytelling. I have a degree in television and film, and I was like, that's what the world needs more of. It's so overwhelming when you start out on this spiritual path and you're like, oh, I could take a masterclass on crystals, or and I take this container for new moon or whatever. But are we actually like looking at what our human experience and what are like the power in our humanness? Mm-hmm. And so I just every journal, I went back last fall when I felt like I was at a crossroads, and what I had created the year before really wasn't working. And I know now because it wasn't in line with what I was supposed to do. But I kept going back in my journals, and everything was like media company, because that's what I know. Like embarrassingly enough, when I wrote my graduate school essays, I put the me in media. That was my line. And so like media has been just so much a part of me. And that's, where I thrive is in the content. And so just like, I just know that this is how I'm going to get that message out there. And then my dear friend Krista, who hosts the I'm Awake Now What podcast, was like, I think I'm considering starting a spiritual podcast network. And I was like, well, I want to start a spiritual media company. So then, we just sat down and I told her all of the things that I don't want to be, which is a spiritual coach. I was like, I don't want master classes. I don't want $100,000 container program, but I know that I need to serve. And I know I need to get this mission of enlightenedhood, which is, to backtrack, enlightenedhood is this word that came to me when I was 6 months pregnant. It was just this divine download that popped into my head, and I was like, oh man, that's really good. And I ran downstairs and told my husband, I was like, look at this word I just came up with. He's like, oh man, that's really good. But I had no idea like what it was going to become, but it very much described the state I was in, which was this deep questioning, this deep just being ripped wide open of knowing that I wanted to do better and find myself again. So to me, enlightenedhood is very much that stage that we get at throughout our lifetimes on our soul journey, where we're awakening to our true selves, which is, our soul, our spirit. And the stage of enlightenedhood, like parenthood or sisterhood, is that time. It can be just this lifetime, bunch of lifetimes, but you're unlearning, remembering, and doing the work and showing up for your best self. So House of Enlightenedhood is all of those things. We're creating podcasts, video interviews, articles. We have a free community that hosts workshops and events. Everything is like a house, a community. If you come home to yourself, we're right next door. We're the free spiritual community center that freely shares all these tools that we've all learned through our own experiences in an altruistic way, in hopes, to shift the human collective forward and all understand that everyone needs access to these tools, and we shouldn't put these huge paywalls in front of them. Otherwise, we're leaving people out. And so that's our mission. Is the money comes from the brands and the people that we're co-creating who have the abundance to really fuel our mission, and then everything that we create is free and accessible. And it's been amazing. We have in our community, we have, I think, people from 15 countries around the world who are just there to connect. And it's completely changed my life in the way that I have met so many amazing people, but also through my conversations with hundreds of people from around the world over the last 2 years, I understand and I see where we have a complete lack of support. Mm-hmm. And that's, in really empowering the human experience and reminding people that the spiritual people that you see on TV or, on Instagram have absolutely nothing to do with your own path. Yeah. And the second that you consider that they're better than you, or they know more than you, or they're further along on their path than you lose the power of your own experiences and your own lessons. And like I said before, to have that conversation on day one that like, you have all the answers, you are your own guru. And how do we normalize that we are these spiritual beings? How do we normalize that we are connected to the universe and we're connected to one another? And how do we empower and liberate people on their path? Because I think, like I said before, when the spiritual path is so interwoven with materialism, self-worth becomes such a tricky thing that gets wrapped up in that, because we're losing the true purpose, that it's going inward within us. It doesn't cost anything. It's uncomfortable, but it's free. And how do we make that part of the huge conversation?
Wow, you just touched on so many things actually that I think are so important. And I because I remember when we first started this journey and having conversations with Ellen about I was like, oh my God, I have to really take a step back, because it was this moment of looking in the mirror and being like, I don't recognize this person standing in front of me. Mm-hmm. I feel like an alien in my own body. Mm-hmm. I am so detached and uncomfortable. And once you realize that, going through the process of oh, okay, now I have to really take a step back and reevaluate what are my values, because they are clearly not what society told me they were supposed to be, because that is not working for me. Yep. Yeah. And then in that process of redefining your values, completely having to change all these things in your life to get realigned with what matters. And I'm so curious as it can be and you talk about this in the book too. You're like, people think that I'm trying to be somebody else, but I wish they would just see and I'm paraphrasing here obviously, but that I'm just giving myself permission to step into my own authenticity and to be myself fully. And that resonated with me so much, because it can be a very isolating process, because so many people and things fall out of your life. Yes. So what was that experience like for you, with it starting around, your grandmother passing, and then, being with your husband who's seen you on both sides of this, and what was that like with your relationship, especially through your pregnancy?
Yeah. So to backtrack, to give you the full story, is I was very bullied in high school. I almost didn't pass the 10th grade because I stopped showing up to school. And so I had so many wounds on, being judged, being seen, being made fun of. And then, like I said before, when so much of my life was my husband's life, I didn't feel like anyone actually knew the real me. I felt like so many people saw a very watered down version of the person who kind of just showed up and was nice and would have, small talk conversations, but no one actually knew me. And, to give them credit, I didn't really know me either at the time, but it was really hard because when I started speaking up, when I started questioning, it was very triggering to a lot of people. And I think people are so triggered by, personal development because, of their own reasons, their own insecurities. But when you start putting yourself out there in a way that's like, you know what, this is actually me. The person you saw before was just like the person who just didn't want to ruffle any feathers and wanted everything to be nice and harmonious. And not to say that I'm a feather ruffler, is that, I don't know, but I have opinions, I have thoughts about things. I'm weird and socially awkward, and there's a lot of things about me that I never really felt comfortable enough to share, especially in acquaintances. And so I really retreated and I think COVID has been a beautiful blessing that, and two, that kind of halfway through that journey, we couldn't go anywhere, where I could kind of fully explore that person and get to know her without having to go out into the real world. But it has been life-changing. And I think the friendships that I have made in adulthood, I have always been very cautious about, who I give my energy to, because I'm really sensitive and I'm your classic like INFJ. Like, I really love people, but I also really hate them. And so I have always been cautious in that sense, but I think allowing the world to see the true me and not feeling shame around that has been such a huge learning process. And I think I'm actually just now finally to the point where like I'm ready to just live in my fullest expression. And I actually was just telling my husband that the other day. Like I said, I want to live with lust of my whole life, and that took a really long time to get here and to heal those wounds of being afraid to be seen for who I really am. And I think I just started an Instagram live interview series interviewing people, and the thought of going live on Instagram 2 years ago would have just, crippled me. And now I could probably like eat a whole bowl of spaghetti live on Instagram and I think I'd be okay with it. But again, it took 2 years to get to that point, and like constantly pushing myself to show up and, having a podcast and using my voice. And so it's really changed my relationships in the way where I am much more loving, because I'm not afraid to say the hard things, but I'm also not afraid to say the really loving things. It's created space for more vulnerability in my relationships. I think my family and I, and my husband and I especially, are able to, to have more of those vulnerable conversations. Like before I wrote my book, when I wrote my book, before I published it, I had to have the conversation with my parents that I was in a domestically abusive relationship. And so having, putting it out there created those space to have those types of conversations, and for people to be like, this is actually me, and I'm not apologizing for it anymore. And I'm going to, look at myself through a completely new, loving, exuberant lens, and I hope that you can do the same. And for a while there, I don't think my husband really understood. And he understood the overall sentiment of it, but I think unless you're deep in that healing and deep in that spiritual path, like you can't see it, you can't understand. And especially if someone else's journey, you can't truly
You're not ready
see
to
it.
hear it.
Right. And especially when you're so, in your head, when people are still operating from, not the understanding that they have control over their thoughts and their perspectives, it's really hard. But we're finally to a point where he's ready to start his own journey. And I feel like I'm just have so many nuggets of wisdom from my own work and from my own journey, where we're in such a beautiful place now that we've never been before, because of my own work and being able to have that vulnerability, but also just being able to approach things with more love. I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned through all of this, is that isn't it really cool that every single moment that we have, we can choose to be loving or not. And we can choose to, to act with more love. And if we looked at everything through that lens, wouldn't that change so much about, how we interact with others, how we feel about ourselves, how we go about the world? And so, since writing the book, I think that's what I've really tried to do. And it's exponentially changed my life.
Man, I just have to reflect, like, it's so interesting to me that really all three of us, like, have relationships where in some senses we're sort of paving the way.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like the universe kind of guided us into this spiritual awakening before, you know, maybe a few steps before our partners do. And you know, I was even telling Sam yesterday that, like, had I not started before him, you know, had I not gone on this path, you know, a few years before he had sort of his awakening, I don't think we would have made it as a couple, to be honest. You know, I don't think, you know, we would both have so many wounds to deal with and to confront that I don't think we would have been able to stay together. Like, I feel like we would have torn each other down, you know, in some sort of way, or it would have become really, really toxic. And yeah, I love that you shared that. And just the fact that, like, what you said about love isn't niceness,
Right.
know? Like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's so conflated, like, where people like, oh, you know, to love somebody is to, like, be nice and to, like, just, you know, agree with them and to, like, you know, no, love is actually the hard shit. You know,
Yes.
it really is, like,
And it's
the
messy.
boundaries. Yeah, it's messy. It's the boundaries. It's the, you know, it's like, it has to start with self too. Like, you know,
Yeah.
in order to really, like, truly be able to show up for somebody in that way,
Yeah.
you have to put those firm boundaries around yourself
Yep.
too. That's something I'm really learning, you know, this last year, and it's continuing into this year.
Amen.
Yeah.
But I actually have a question for you that I've been thinking about. It's been on my mind because I've been having so many conversations with family members and friends who are struggling with seeing others within their intimate circle in pain or not wanting to cause them pain, you know? And so they, you know, either avoid dealing with it or dealing with having the conversation, whatever. And as a mother, you know, like, what's interesting, and it's shocking to me that I haven't had this conversation with my friends, my mom friends, but as a mother, like, where do you set your boundaries? And I know your little daughter's only 2 right now, but as a mother, how do you imagine those boundaries would show up for you in terms of allowing Luna to make her mistakes and also needing to protect her?
Oh, this is such a heavy question, and I don't know if I have a great answer to it, but I think what helps me, or at least gives me peace of mind, is knowing that she chose me, and she, you know, willingly chose our life and these experiences to help her own growth and help her own soul. My mom actually shared with me that when I was going through my really rough time being bullied in high school, and I actually, because of a result of the bullying, I was, you know, moving up in track, and I was a really good mid distance runner, and, you know, was en route to go to the championship and stuff, and I couldn't run anymore. Like, I had a stabbing pain in my spine and completely lost all athletic outlet. And so my mom went to see a psychic to ask, you know, what's going on, how can I help her? And she told my mom, and my mom didn't tell me this until she read my book, that the woman told her that I chose this and she had to let it happen.
Wow.
And so
God.
yeah, and can you imagine, as a mother, watching your daughter go through this? And she always tells me that she so vividly remembers me sitting at the dinner table and holding up a knife and being like, it feels like someone's stabbing a knife into my back, which, you know, and so I don't know, if it's not easy to let go and, you know, and trust that these experiences are what our children need to grow. But where I've started, at least, is never downplaying her emotions. I think as parents, we've been really, you know, we have all these things that we say as parents, like, you're okay, stop crying, you know, sit down and shut up. Like,
Yeah, invalidating and shaming.
exactly. And we're teaching our kids to be quiet and that their emotions aren't valid. And so I think for me, it's starting with creating that space to validate her emotions and what she's feeling, which I hope, you know, will lead to her being able to trust her intuition and her own feelings and understanding what there are, and, you know, starting young with giving her the tools so she can navigate, and understanding that my role is to guide her, but I can't, you know, I can't play God in her life. And so that's what I really have in my back pocket in terms of, you know, trying to consciously lead in that way. But then it's scary because we see shows like This Is Us, right? Where moms are
Oh my
so
God.
well intentioned and want to love their kids so much, but somewhere along the way there's miscommunication that just leads to decades of trauma. And so it's like, can we ever get it right? I don't know, but I think to at least know that I'm trying to give her the most powerful and potent tools as possible to have in her toolkit so that she can be more self-aware from a young age and not have her emotions diminish, and understand from a very young age that she has access to all these things and that she has connection to the universe and all this beautiful, cosmic energy, let's call it. I think that is a good place to start, and we'll figure it out. Well, ask me again when she's a teenager.
I actually do have a question about that. Like, in hindsight, in that chapter where you talked about, like, instead of telling your parents what you were going through, you let them just believe that you were this reckless teenager. It's like knowing how you felt when you were going through it and then knowing what you know now. Do you feel like there was something else your parents could have done, or you might wish they had done, or that you might do differently with your daughter in a situation like that would allow her to feel safe enough to talk about what's going on?
Yeah. I had a conversation about this with my parents because I wanted to make it very clear to them, because they did the best with what they knew and what they had. And I think it goes back to the way that we're indoctrinated, as young individuals and then as parents. And so much of their teachings to me, which I'm sure came from their parents, was, don't get pregnant, like, the classic teenager talk. So when a domestic relationship is so intertwined with that narrative about a woman's body and, getting pregnant and teenage sex, I think it's when there's so much shame around it, and that's the way that you've been taught since a very young age, and you don't have that self-awareness yet, there wasn't really any place to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I told my parents, like, you did the best with what you know, and I wouldn't have changed anything because I needed all these lessons to learn and grow. But yeah, looking back on it, I always think, like, would things have gone differently if I would have spoke up? But in so many different instances, if I would have spoke up in the relationship, if I would have spoke up to my parents, if I would have stood up to the people, who were constantly instant messaging me, bullying me online, like, we always have those what ifs. But I think I'm grateful for all of the lessons, and I think that's all we can do, because if we spend too much time worrying, then
You're not being present. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I'm not honoring how far I've come and everything I've learned and the power and wisdom that I've gained from that experience.
Can I read you out to yourself again? What, 'cause as soon as you guys brought up presence, like, I want to read this page too.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you literally have a letter called A Letter About Presence. Dear Luna Wild, lots of spiritual teachers these days take advantage of the idea of, quote, finding your purpose, and it's almost ad nauseum. What's even worse, this idea puts so much pressure on us to find that purpose and feel less than if we have no fucking clue what it means. Mm-hmm. And then I read something today, I read something today by Eckhart Tolle that changed everything. Your purpose, ... is your presence. With so many messages in our face that in order to be whole, we must find this grand purpose, it's easy to feel so shitty if we don't have a, quote, come to universe moment about the meaning of our lives. But what if ... your only purpose at this very moment is to be present? And this particular letter has really stayed with me.
Me too.
And especially, we just experienced this Aries new moon this past Sunday, and Sam
it
and
sucked.
I were talking about
It sucked.
Yeah,
it was rough.
It was really intense,
It was.
And I think I did a small reading before on Sunday, before our moon circle that night, just because I wanted to receive, like, what sort of, usually there's some theme that kind of comes through about this particular, or whatever phase that is, and what was coming through at that time was stop focusing so much on the what, like what you're meant to
Yeah.
be, and start focusing on the how. Like, how do you want to show up? How do
How do
you
you
want
want
to
to
be?
feel?
Yeah, you know? And that passage that you wrote, it's just, I mean, I feel like that is life in a nutshell. And so many of us get so distracted by all these other
Yeah.
things that is really what it all boils down to, is just being present and just being,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. And it's so overlooked. It's something that is, well, simple, yes, but much harder than we assume because of, the way that we're conditioned to be so distracted and constantly worrying about the future. But it was another thing that just completely changed the way I thought about myself and my spiritual journey and spirituality in general, because I was always searching for something and I felt like I was always pushing and always trying to be something that I wasn't. And to just be in this moment and go with the flow, is that all we have to do? Yes.
Yeah.
But it's easier said than done, of course.
Right.
But I think I was reflecting on this a few days ago because I was watching Soleil Moon Frye's documentary on Hulu. Have you seen it?
No.
Yes,
Oh my
yes.
God, I
Well,
can't wait to watch it.
So I was watching it and I was like, God damn it, I wish I was older in the 90s, because they were just being, like, there were no phones. There was no like, this person's doing this on the internet. And oh my God, they were just present and there and fully themselves. I'm like, can we go back to that? Because imagine if you're just sitting in a room with someone and you're just like fully in it. You're fully in conversation. You're fully in their presence, fully in their energy, and you're just there. We're not there anymore. Are we ever just like here right now? And I just now, like, I'm one of those people that I'll just leave my phone upstairs and I'm the worst texter. And
Oh my
just like,
gosh,
I've
me
never.
too. I'm like gone too far the other way where I'm like, people are like, I can never get a hold of you. I'm like, oh God, I know I need to be better about that. But like, oh my God, I feel
Free.
chained to it when I have it with me, because
Yes.
I just like, I don't want to be consumed by it ever again.
Yeah. But how has this little thing become so connected to our worth and to like who we are and our identity, and to strip it away is so freeing. And to me, that's so much of the present moment. It's just like stripping away all the things that we think we should be doing, the person that we think we are, like this idea of efficiency and we should be, busier, and just be. And that's what I'm working on my husband on that one of just, being. But it's uncomfortable, right? Like when we filled our time and our thoughts with so much crap and you're just sitting and doing nothing. It's very uncomfortable, but I love that. You can't really see, but I have like this bird feeder right here on my window.
I was just looking at the bird in your
That's
window a couple
rad.
minutes ago, and I was like, oh, she's
So that's what I do. I just sit and watch birds, and it's great. And it creates I know, I'm like an 80-year-old woman in a 30-year-old body. But
I know, me too.
I literally just wrote a story or posted a story like 2 days ago that said, like, if I had told my, early 30-year-old self that I'd be like, my favorite thing to do is just like watch my bird feeder.
Yes, me too.
I would have laughed in my face,
Oh my God, when I'm not home because like there are so many birds now that come to our bird feeder that if I'm not home to refill the bird feeder every other day, I feel guilty because I'm like, where are they going to eat from?
sitting there, and now they're all mating and they're like doing these mating things where they're feeding each other. I'm like, go on and make bird babies. But those simple joys and just being and things that don't, things that connect us to our divinity, because I think birds are so very much that. To have more things like that can truly help us just be present.
It's so interesting that you bring this up too, because Ellen and I were also talking about this yesterday, like the difference between like spending time with someone as in, oh, we're in the same proximity. I had this moment a few weeks ago where I was like, well, it never even registered to me that the people around me were like, well, I'm putting in all this effort to like be here and spend time with you. And in my mind, I was like, okay, but you're always in another room, or you're texting on the phone, or you're, rushing to like make phone calls and make plans. I was like, that's not spending time. Like physical
Yes.
proximity isn't spending quality time together. But also, here again comes another one of my lessons, right? Which is like having patience and empathy for people who are not yet on this journey and don't yet see what that does to their ability to be present and the impacts on that throughout everything they do in their lives.
1,000%.
Yeah, we've been like indoctrinated by this FOMO culture that if you're not like, I'm going to call it plugged into the matrix, that you're missing out on everything. When I found that I think it was April or May of last year, we cut the cord on cable and I have not watched news since. I have no idea what's happening in the world, but I am so much happier. And, you know, we're so like on this train. And once you step off and you realize that there's so much more life to be had and so much more magic that exists around you, I think it completely changes everything. But you're so right that like if you're not in it or you're not off the train, you can't even see that you're on it to begin with.
You know, and then that's when
so
we miss
blind.
those moments of like when you were talking about just going to the ocean. Again, another moment that like really struck my heart chords, because for me, the ocean was really healing too, where it's like how do we appreciate those moments, or the joy in like taking a walk or listening to the birds sing, or like walking in our bare feet in the dirt and the grass.
Yeah.
If we don't do that, but that's not where society places value.
No. So true.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry again.
I know. I've been loving this conversation. I don't want it to end.
I know.
But we always like to ask everybody that we talk to. I mean, you have a full book full of gems of wisdom, but throughout your whole journey, what has been like, what do you keep on going back to? Like, what is that one thing that you feel like has been almost kind of like a lamppost or you know, a cornerstone of who you are, your practice, and how you want to show up in the world now?
I think it's to be freely me. And that's something I'm just stepping into. But I'll say it in two parts, because I think in order to be freely me, I want to refer back to the letter you're talking about the orange, because I think you need an understanding of that, especially when you hold a lot of wounds of judgment and fear around, you know, people judging you for being you. And that's the idea that when you squeeze an orange and you put pressure on it, what comes out is orange juice. So when you do the same to a person, when a person is triggered, put pressure on, what comes out is what is on the inside. And so to understand that everyone's just operating within their own wounds and trauma, and it actually has absolutely nothing to do with you, and the way that they're viewing you is actually how they view themselves, and it's a mirror. First of all, it's such a hard thing to let go of, that you have absolutely no control over how someone sees you or how someone views you. Like the version of you that exists in their reality, you have zero control over. And so once you can let that go and understand that everyone's only operating from a place of what they know and how deeply they've seen themselves, it opens an entire world for you to be entirely you. And so what I'm riding with right now is the idea that if you're to believe that you have done this a lot of times already, like hundreds, if not thousands, who you are and your essence and the lessons you've learned and like who you've cultivated to, like who you are at a soul level, has been artfully crafted through all these experiences, through hundreds and thousands of lifetimes. And now we come here and we start to remember, but we're going to let that one little sliver in time like completely fuck up who we've been, you know, becoming for hundreds of lifetimes. And to think of it as just such a small blip on the radar when we're this expansive and infinite being, I think takes a little bit of the weight off it. Like you're going to let that one Karen in the Instagram comments like keep you from being your fullest self when you've lived like so many lifetimes. Like own it, own how powerful and expansive you are. So that's what I'm stepping into right now. And I think there's so many of us who are being called, like authenticity is such a strong call right now, and just being truthful and speaking truth and being sovereign in what you believe in and your truth as a spiritual being. So that's really what I've been working on and been so called to. And I know so many other people are feeling the same, but it's so empowering. This is day 3. I decided that I'm going to do 30 days of just fully trusting and listening to my intuition, and just go from there. Because I think when we can live from a place where we're, so in flow and present, it can completely transform our lives.
Oh yeah, 1,000%.
That was really
That's
beautiful.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really important too, because I also feel like authenticity, like this one specific word, is also being very commoditized in the self-care
Yes.
world right now. And
Yes,
it's like,
thank you for saying that.
unfortunately, it's the best word to describe what it is, right? But the fact of the matter remains, like, that, buying certain products or paying for certain courses and credentials isn't going to give you some magic badge to like being authentic. Being authentic is hard, and it's scary, and it's vulnerable, and it's like the shit nobody wants to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. I think for so long this always goes back to the way we see social media, or we see spirituality on social media. But one, I think there's a difference between being vulnerable and then being vulnerable to sell someone something, because that completely changes the lens in which you are being authentic, if authentic at all. And then I also think that for so long I thought that in order to be spiritual, you had to look a certain way or act a certain way. And I feel like in my mind, I'm this really like ethereal, dark, like mysterious goddess. But in reality, I'm just like really awkward and always have food in my hair. And like I literally, before we started this interview, dropped a thing of bananas on my toe, and I'm pretty sure it's broken. Like shit like that just happens to me. And that's okay. That doesn't make me any less spiritual, but we're shoved with all these messages in our face that like, this is what being your most authentic, goddess version of you looks like. But sometimes it's just like owning that you're human. And sometimes that human is not as like cool as you thought you were, but in not being cool, you're actually really cool. So I thank you so much for saying that, because I think authenticity, it's just such a huge buzzword, so much like purpose, but what does it actually mean? I think it's just like just being freely, unapologetically you, and not thinking that you have to show up in any certain way, not thinking that you have to tell the whole internet that you're being authentic, but just, and then here, full circle, comes back to presence, just being you in the moment and owning that.
This is a beautiful way to end. I love this. Actually, last question. How can people find you?
Yes,
Sure.
most important.
You can find me on Instagram. My personal one is at Lena Lemos. You can follow that for baby and dog pictures. But if you want more spiritual stuff, at Enlightenedhood.
At Enlightenedhood. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you enough. Like, this has been such a magical hour, and I hope that we continue these conversations, and we'll be following Luna's growth and, like, whole life journey.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Thanks for being such a great role model for moms too, and just bringing up the hard shit, because I think we need more of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm so grateful to have this conversation and have these spaces to have these conversations.
1,000%.
Music for Woo New is composed by Adam Miller.